Thank you, Nicky, for taking those questions. And I now call upon our General Secretary to move the vote of thanks to the Secretary of State for Education.
Nicky, can I say how pleased I am that you're here at your first NASUWT conference? Unfortunately, your predecessors have run scared and not attended for 20 years. However, you've realised that obviously it's time to face the music and engage with the profession. So welcome to the NASUWT conference. So I am pleased that you're here, and I'm delighted you're not Michael Gove. You are, of course, dealing with his legacy, but then, as is so often the case, it's a man who creates the mess and a woman who's left to pick up the pieces. In fact, it has to be said that you have already begun to set out your stall rather differently than your predecessor. And a good start was that you had been prepared to acknowledge that there was a problem with workload and that had to be addressed. You took seriously the concerns we raised with you, and your own workload challenge confirmed what NASUWT evidence had been showing the government since 2011. Not to put too fine a point on it, Nicky, teachers are being crushed by workload physically and mentally. And as a result of the government's failure to tackle this issue, we do now have the worst teacher supply crisis since 1945. And that isn't to talk down the profession, Nicky. That's because we care about the profession and we want to work with you to do it. So now you've recognised the issue and you've engaged with us on it, and teachers are going to expect you to deliver on it. And I am pleased that you've chosen our conference at which to launch the report to the bureaucracy working groups. No other union has done as much as this one to highlight and tackle the issues of workload. But the challenge you have now is that you have to make sure that the recommendations in those reports, and there are some good recommendations in those reports, make a positive difference to removing the immense bureaucratic burdens of marking and assessment, data collection and lesson planning, which are blighting teachers' lives. And in order to ensure that they do make a difference, you have to face up to the fact that unless government uses all the levers it has to make sure that the report's findings are implemented in full, such as statutory force, such as funding incentives, and all the other things government can do to drive change, unless this is done, they will be ignored by employers, they will be ignored by schools, and they will make not one jot of difference to the working lives of teachers. And while we're on the subject of removing bureaucratic burdens, perhaps you could have a word with your cabinet colleagues to crack down on the unjust and unnecessary bureaucracy being imposed on trade unions through the iniquitous trade union bill. Quite frankly, Nicky, this bill is an affront to the values of a decent society. It undermines human rights and it seeks to silence the voice of working people in this country. Now again, unlike your predecessor, you have been prepared to engage with and seek to resolve the NASUWT's long-standing trade dispute with the government. This term alone, there have been days of meetings with your senior officials to see if progress can be made. The NASUWT wishes to secure resolution, but I have to advise you that your job is going to be a lot harder if your ministerial colleagues, like Chancellor George Osborne, make announcements like the one in his budget statement, which are deliberately designed to incite, inflame and intimidate the profession. And as I understand it, it's actually not only the profession that's been inflamed. I see the Chancellor's announcement has even inflamed passions within the rank and file of the Conservative Party. Nicky, this is no way to run an education service. It's actually no way to run the economy either, but that's another story. Once again, Nicky, the Chancellor's announcements are unravelling. Don't allow yourself to become the next Ian Duncan Smith. Listen to the concerns that are being raised. If you want educational excellence everywhere, as your white paper is entitled, then recognise there are outstanding academies, outstanding community schools, outstanding foundation schools, outstanding voluntary aided schools, which prove academies do not have the monopoly on excellence and that structural change by itself doesn't raise standards. I heard what you said about no turning back, but I ask you, think again and ditch that proposal to force every school to become an academy. Now, of course, you also have a role for Minister for Equalities and Women, and you have recognised, and we welcome that, some of the inequalities being faced by women, and in particular, you've taken up concerns that we've raised on the whole issue of flexible working. And we welcome your comments on this. But the scale of the inequality goes far beyond this. 3/4 of the teaching profession are women. And yet, if a woman asks for flexible working, she's told she has no right. If a woman teacher is pregnant, she's shown the door. If a woman teacher stands up for her right to pay progression, she's told it's not her turn. If a woman teacher makes it to the upper pay range, she's told she's too expensive. And if a woman teacher is black or disabled or lesbian, bi or trans, then the odds are completely stacked against her. The fact is that schools are asserting themselves as breeding grounds of male advantage and misogyny. And this is as a result of the freedoms and flexibilities your government has put into the hands of schools. Discrimination is rife, and we now have a pay system that's more akin to the Wild West, rife with lawlessness, gambling with teachers' careers and riddled with uncertainty. You have, however, recognised the issues, and women teachers will now expect you to deliver. And if you really are serious about equality, then I ask you today that should the School Teachers Review Body recommend that the proposal to enable schools to move teachers down the pay range, a proposal put forward by your department, a proposal based on the complete nonsense that somehow you are less of a teacher if you step down from the upper pay range, if this is recommended, I ask you to reject it. Because be in no doubt, this will be yet another provision that is used against women, another flexibility that goes directly against the grain of your stated aspirations for women. All I've described and more are the consequences of your predecessor's ambition for a free market across the education service, for his desire that every head teacher should be captain of their ship. And the result has been more Captain Blythes than Captain Kirks. So I do hope that the supported autonomy to which you refer in the White Paper is a recognition of the need to bring some order to the chaos and the abuse that currently exists, and that we'll start to see an end to the injustice and the inequality that is rife across the system and which is happening on your watch. Because, make no mistake, if there are inequalities and injustices for teachers, there are equal injustices and inequalities for children and young people. We believe passionately that looking after teachers and looking after children and young people are two sides of the same coin. Teachers' pay and conditions of service are inextricably linked to the provision of high-quality education. And if you have variables for teachers, you inevitably have variations for children and young people. So you cannot, if you believe in entitlement, if you actually want to end the postcode lottery, you cannot leave it to the accreditation, the teachers' standards, to the accreditation of individual schools. That is right for inequality to have that variation. This is a public education service, and if you want entitlement for all children and young people, then you need a national structure with local flexibilities. And no union has done more than the NASUWT to champion the cause of children and young people in this country. It's this union that has exposed that now educational opportunity is based on parents' ability to pay. It is this union which has exposed how poverty is degrading and derailing the life chances of children. And so when you thank us for representing the interests of our members, we are actually representing the interests of children and young people. Now, of course, you have a legal background, and I know you'll recognise the importance of weighing up the evidence, and we think the evidence is actually overwhelming. And I'm sure that teachers and school leaders will welcome the response to the evidence we have presented on the abuse of teachers by social media, and that you intend to take action. But Nicky, it's not just social media that we've presented you with evidence, so I'm glad that NASUWT evidence has been seen as credible by the government, and you'll act on it, and I hope you'll act on all the other pieces of evidence that we've put in front of the government, because no union has done more detailed research with the profession, with parents, with the public about our public education system. So I welcome the fact of working with you on social media abuse. I welcome your comments on violence against teachers. That will resonate positively with the profession. But the other evidence we present to you is equally as valid as that evidence on social media. Now, I did read in The Guardian, actually, who trailed your speech, that you were throwing down a challenge to teacher unions to step up, seize the opportunities and help you to shape the future. Well, can I tell you, NASUWT has already made that choice. You're talking to the pragmatic trade union committed to securing world-class education for all children and young people. But you won't deliver that by having teachers demoralised, deprofessionalised and denigrated, and if they are women, systematically discriminated against. Now, we have solutions on all these matters. We've got solutions on all of those matters, and if you're willing to work with us, we will help you to deliver those solutions so that we have that world-class education service maintained. Now, you also asked us this morning to do our bit, and I'm glad that you find the NASCWT website so helpful in terms of the view. I actually have a similar view about the DFE website press releases. As we're talking about teachers doing their bit, can I just say to you, if it wasn't for NASUWT supporting teachers to resist punitive pay policies, punitive performance management policies, punitive capability policies, punitive sickness absence policies, if it wasn't for the NASUWT providing support and guidance and advice, if it wasn't for the NASUWT providing the professional development opportunities for teachers and school leaders, the opportunities they craved but they're starved of because they have no contractual entitlement to professional development, and until that is addressed, whatever you say in the white paper will not work. If it wasn't for the NASCWT providing advice and support for newly qualified teachers exploited in their induction year and denied their statutory entitlements, and if it wasn't for NASCWT challenging discriminatory practices, the position would be even worse. Now, Nicky, you have said you want to communicate with the profession and work with the NASCWT, and I do welcome that. That was the message I picked up between all the other passages designed, I think, to incite the conference. And whoever gives advice to ministers on their speeches, can I say that it's not a good way to promote government policy by deliberately appearing to set out to upset people when we want to engage with you. Now, I actually very much welcome that you want to communicate, and I agree it's vital. But we've got to remember that communication has got to be a two-way process. And it usually works like this. I listen to what you have to say. You listen to what I have to say. Then we have a conversation, and then hopefully we enjoy a common journey together. Now, unfortunately, your government doesn't listen with the intent to understand. It only listens with the intent to reply. And that has got to end. Now, Nicky, I sincerely hope that you're going to be the instrument that is able to change that approach, because without change, your aspiration for the white paper for educational excellence everywhere is in danger of becoming nothing more than a catchy alliterative phrase which will be forced to consign to the dustbin of history. Thank you for coming to conference.